There will now be an opportunity of silent prayer meditation. Please be seated. Honorable members, I've reliably been informed that the whipper has agreed that there will be any motions for today. So therefore, we shall now get to the subject matter. But before I do that, may I welcome and appreciate the participation of our provinces in the activities of the NCOP, and welcome all special delegates, MECs, and so forth, who are part of the subject matter. And on the basis of that, then proceed to the subject matter by calling on the chairperson of the council to introduce the subject matter for debate today. Honorable Kandi.
Deputy Chairperson, permanent and special delegates, ladies and gentlemen. On behalf of this House and Parliament, may I offer our condolences to the families
Can we assist it, please? Audio.
Thank you. Deputy Chairperson, may I, on behalf of this House and Parliament in general, offer our sincere condolences to the families of the young women and children who have perished in South Africa at the hands of those who were supposed to love them in these recent times. Too many women, too many children have become victims of violence. We are a nation in mourning against this brutality. It is enough that us know genoeg. I think we must call on men, society, to rise up against the Khatamarukhwan. Because we must make a distinction between real men and these ones who are in the bodies of men, who pray against us, our children, their nieces, their mothers, their sisters, their grandmothers. Because if we don't do that, we are likely not to see what the former UN Secretary Ban Ki-moon said when he said, when women strive, so we live. Because if we do not thrive, if we do not live, nations die. This week has also been declared as the Child Protection Week under the theme of protection. Child protection is everybody's business. Now, the rights of children are human rights. It is our duty to protect children. In the last few weeks, we have seen an increase in brutality and violence against women and children. These brutalities are seen as the highest form of betrayal against women and children killed by men within our societies. I don't think any human being deserves to be killed by somebody who has declared love to them. Yesterday, we were again alerted about the fate of Tembisi Lenyende from the East Rand in Gauteng, who was last seen going to work 2 weeks ago and was later found dead after 10 days. A very strange set of reasons being proffered, a very sad scene being found, a very sad kind of policing work being done. We want to also offer our sincere condolences to her family and also to Hannah Cornelia's family, the student of Stellenbosch University who was hijacked on Friday and her body was found on Monday. We are aware of many, many more. We are aware of bodies of women and children which are discovered in shallow graves, some burned beyond recognition, some raped, some mutilated. I don't think we have words enough to express our outrage and our disgust. Violence against women, therefore, remains one of the most serious problems within South Africa. Gender-based violence, can we ever say we will eradicate it? Many victims of gender-based violence go to police stations, they come back to the same homes, or they go to places of safety. Many times the same victims go back to the police, to the courts, and withdraw the cases. We are aware of the many times that Karabo Mokoena herself went to report the abuse to the police station. But I suspect that the problem lies with us, society. This thing where you say to women, nyamezela. This thing where you mothers tell your daughters to stay in relationships which are killing them. This thing that you force young girls into marriages as women in South Africa, and fathers, because sometimes you still want to get lobola. This thing where we are not raising our girls to stand up and to believe that actually the best love is the love that you can give to yourself first. That no other human being must love you more than you love yourself. That respect does not come with pain or denigration. This thing that women must be married because without marriage we are not complete is complete a bucket full of something which would be unparliamentary if I said in this house. This thing where we have, as parents, not yet begun to raise our boy children to respect themselves. I come from a household deputy chairperson where my mother said to her sons, because she raised all her children, take your jacket, take a walk. Don't come home until you can discuss coherently with your spouse. But she also said to her girls, make sure you do what you need to do to keep the relationship to work. But exercise, girl, because no man beats my child. And if the exercise doesn't help, the courts of law are there. And I think that we need to begin to worry that the South African average of rape is greater than the global average. One woman or child is raped out of 833, when in other areas is out of 10,000. This level of rape, we suspect, is lower because not everybody reports rape. Victims of rape continue to be disempowered because the training of the police, whether it is lack of training or reluctance, leaves much to be desired. Most women who experience violence in their own homes, at the hands of their partners or husbands, don't talk. This thing about makeup amongst black women has become more of a problem than an enhancer, because it is sometimes used to mask the marks of beatings. Now, you can't love anybody if you humiliate that person. That's not love. Immediately you start touching the dignity of the fellow human being, we must conclude that something is amiss. And this fellow human being must begin to augment the love by saving her own life. Every 8 hours, a woman is killed by an intimate partner, according to South Africa's Medical Research Council. 1 in 5 women in relationships have experienced physical violence by a partner. That makes up 21% in South Africa. That's what Stats South Africa tells us. It can't be healthy. Increasingly, when you analyze the murder cases in South Africa, you find that those who died in domestic violence situations outnumber those who died perhaps by Tsotsis outside. Between April and the end of December 2016, 30,069 cases of rape were reported. In South Africa, we have just under 110 rape cases per day. There were 4,815 cases of sexual assault in that same period. Sexual offenses per province is also very interesting to note. Gauteng tops at 9,671. KwaZulu-Natal follows, 8,947. Eastern Cape, 8,797. Western Cape, 7,130. Limpopo, 4,369. Northwest, 4,164. Free State, 3,928. Mpumalanga, 3,331. Northern Cape, 1,717. These figures say we must hang our faces in shame. Not only as the people who are in the top 500 of leadership in South Africa. It says that something is going terribly wrong with us. It says that we must go back and analyze the reasons for domestic violence. Now, studies have shown us, since we began to look at the impact of recession and slow-growing economies, that when pressure mounts, the weakest amongst society suffer most. During the war, it is women and children. In recession, it is women and children. In states where we're not sure about what is happening, it is women and children. The sad thing about this, women of South Africa, is that we predicted the backlash. A few years ago, we spoke about the backlash on South African women. We did nothing. We politicked about it. Now it is time to leave the politics behind, to stand up and say it cannot continue under our watch, at least as leaders of society. Because when you are a member of parliament, you are a leader. You are supposed to give guidance somewhere. I think it is important that We isolate the inequalities, the poverty, the unemployment. We deal with issues of moral decay. We deal with issues of whether democracy in its march forward has somehow put and rushed the galloping of women into the economic space faster than our men could appreciate. Whether when we became triumphant as women, we navigated the space properly without leaving the men folk behind. But whatever the reason is, nobody has any right to touch anybody else if that person does not want to. Nobody has any right to kill a child. I think that culturally, we must also go back. Ukuthwala, chubediso. Have these had any impact in what we are seeing happening? Has the advent of 1994 presented us with anything? Can we go back to the trenches as when we did fighting for national liberation to say that we need now to do the following so that, as women in South Africa? Honorable members, the one achievement we have made is to put key legislation in place. We must police it. We must make sure that it is implementable. We must live it. We must advocate. We must go back to images on TV. We must go back to engaging with the media and the depiction of women by all forms of media. But we must also remember that we are proudly the signatories of He for She, which means that men will stand up for women, which means that we will also stand up for boy children and girl children. Sustainable Development Goal number 5 is on achieving not only just the promotion of gender equality and empowering all women and girls, but is a promise to all women and girls in their diversity of circumstances and status to end all forms of discrimination against them in law and practice, to eliminate all forms of violence and harmful practices, to have an equal voice, to participate in leadership and in decision-making in every field at all levels of governance, to value, reduce, redistribute, and provide to ensure that that unpaid domestic work does not go unnoticed, to have universal access to both sexual and reproductive rights and health, to have ownership and control over the productive assets and resources, and more importantly, to also be counted amongst those who demand and should enjoy decent work. Now, we must remain, as South Africans, steadfast that we will produce strong families. Can we start with the men of the NCOP? Borra, can we hear you standing up for your girl children, for your sisters, for your wives, le bomakhwapeng. Can we hear you also telling us why it is important to marry one and to keep others dangling out there? Can you tell us why the public must have trust in you if you do not trust your own feelings to commit to one partner? Can you tell us why we should put our trust as women of this country in your hands if we feel unsafe in our own homes? So, it would be very nice to hear the men of this house out there in their constituencies standing up and saying, not in our gut, not in our time, not in our name, go lekane. Ke a leboga.
Thank you very much. May I have the call on Honorable Tikana, MEC Eastern Cape?
Deputy Chairperson of the House, Chief Whip of the House, Honorable Permanent Delegates, distinguished guests and members, good afternoon. We meet here today as the country marks the 2017 Child Protection Week and a couple of days after the burial of a 3-year-old Jade Amber Feldman of Buffalo Flats in East London, Eastern Cape. The lifeless body of the child was found in a stream a day after she went missing. In another incident, members of South African Police Services are still investigating 2 separate murder dockets after bodies of 2 women were found over the weekend. Nothandeki Levelem, who is 47 years, and Buiswa Wokisi, 44 years, from Greenfield and Konipi, respectively died in the hands of their perpetrators. In recent months, stories of abuse and killing of women and children have risen to levels we have never seen in South Africa, young democracy. Violence against women and children in our country has reached unparalleled levels. This scourge is undermining the nation's economic and social development. The cases I have mentioned represent only a fraction of the incidents of violence against women, as many go unreported. What becomes more frightening is the fact that the perpetrators are mostly known members of community or members of the families. We cannot run away from the fact that widespread abuse of alcohol and drugs is the biggest contributor of the incidents. Some of these victims of violence are also rendered vulnerable by prior consumption of alcohol and drugs. Poverty and social inequality have also been found to be the key drivers of violence. Unequal access to wealth and opportunities results in feeling of low self-esteem, which is then challenged into anger and frustration. Violence is then used to gain the sought-after respect and power through violent robbery, rape, severe punishment of children, and violence against partners. Deputy Chairperson, the exposure of boys and girls to physical, sexual, and emotional trauma as children increases their chance of being violent as adolescents and adults, and increases the risk of victimization as adults, respectively. In the Eastern Cape, we also noted a trend in high numbers of women and children seeking health care for injuries resulting from violence. Unwanted pregnancy due to rape and the increases in sexual transmitted diseases and HIV and AIDS are some of challenges we are grappling with. The incidence of cannibalism, while isolated, but they send shockwaves throughout the country. As government, we continue to strengthen our work in creating awareness on violence against women and children. We have, during the last financial year, reached areas such as Ndabangulu, Spunzana, Maclear, Fort Beaufort, Lukholweni, Bedford, Ezibeleni, Mlungisi, Catcope, Dispatch, KwaZakhele. Those are the areas where there were women and children who were abused, and in other instances, women were killed. The country has the policies and clear processes in place to deal with the issues of violence against women and children. However, the response has been disjointed, and as such, it has not been optimally successful. Domestic Violence Act, Sexual Offences and Related Offences Act, Child Justice Act have been introduced by our government. We need to strengthen coordination and implementation of a multi-sectoral approach on violence against women and children. The government must introduce or strengthen gender violence units in all police stations to reduce barriers in reporting sexual offenses. Also, the victims must stop withdrawing reported cases in our police stations. Lastly, as the government, we must strengthen our justice system to better deal with the cases of gender-based violence. The Provincial Safety Strategy outcome on prevention of violence speaks to activities that can be implemented to close the gap that seems to exist between policy and implementation. Going forward, civil society must play a major role in the implementation of policies that are targeted at preventing and responding to the challenges at hand. Local level structures must play an oversight and coordination role in mobilizing communities for all programs that seek to prevent violence against women and children. In the memory of young Jade and many other women and children who have suffered and died in hands of their perpetrators, as this House and the rest of South Africa, we must come together and say no. Let us be counted among the men and women who stood up and fought against this scourge that is threatening to bring our country to its knees. I thank you, Honorable Deputy Chairperson.
Thank you very much, Honorable Member. I know I should have done that from the beginning. Let me recognize and appreciate the participation of these young girls in the gallery who found it necessary to be part of the debate and so forth. Thank you very much, although they are leaving now, and that's where the debate is hotting up. But nevertheless, let's proceed with the debate and call on Honorable Engelbrecht to continue the debate.
Honourable Chairperson, today I stand here as a member of Parliament's legislature, where we need to ensure that laws are debated and implemented to serve our people. Unfortunately, the laws that we passed have failed, kidnapped and murdered Annalisa Dulazi, whose murderer only received a 15-year sentence. Rape is one of the most underreported crimes, and only a small proportion of reported rapes result in incarceration. We need to ensure our laws are effective, with the police and judiciary enforcing them for speedy justice. Together with the necessary training, our police should show the necessary, yet often wanting, compassion and empathy for the victims and their families. A parliamentary question revealed that more than 189 police stations have no victim-friendly rooms, a shocking indictment to victims of violence who deserve better protection from our police, who must also enforce protection orders. Our violated women and children deserve more FCGs, which are family violence, child protection and sexual offence units, and Tutuzela centres, where victims of abuse can report, lay charges and receive medical treatment with access to social workers. Today I stand before you as a mother the joy of pregnancy, the exhilaration of holding your baby in your arms, and the dreams of a bright future for your child. And you would do everything possible to protect that precious little body. 3-year-old Courtney Peters was raped twice before being killed by a person living in her own home. Her mother will never again hear the sound of her laughter and never again have those little arms hugging her and saying, "Good night, Mommy." Why have we in South Africa allowed this to happen? What are the causes of this destructive behavior that is destroying families? And what must we change to prevent this from happening? Researchers have come up with models of violence with multiple factors explaining battering and the common roots of verbal, physical, and sexual coercion towards women to answer the question, why does this particular man batter, sexually assault, and murder their victims? At the heart of this research stands the structural features of our society, where in patriarchal family social systems, verbal, physical, and sexual coercion towards women are unfortunately common. The body of pregnant Nicola Pinar was found in a shallow grave behind her boyfriend's home. Studies have found that most male beaters confine their violent behavior to their partners. And case histories from battered women indicate the extreme sexual jealousy displayed by their partners as a common motive of men who kill their wives. Vivacious Karabo Mukeno's life was extinguished by her boyfriend when her burnt, and her bruised body was discovered. Alcohol use has been reported in between 25% and 85% of incidents of battering, and up to 75% of acquaintance rapes, with research linking drinking and alcohol abuse to physical aggression, especially binge drinking associated with marital violence across all ethnic groups and social classes. Beautiful 21-year-old Stellenbosch student Hannah Cornelius and a friend were hijacked, and she was subsequently raped and killed. Power and control frequently underlie intimate partner violence, but the purpose of the violence may also be in response to a man's feelings of powerlessness and an inability to accept rejection. Anneline Pillay was shot 5 times, allegedly by her ex-boyfriend. Male violence against women often endures in society because it is modeled in families and in society, and rarely is there serious punishment for the perpetrator. Noluvu Suendendavu was killed because she was gay. Our families are the starting point of socialization, including that of violent behavior. And research has shown violent criminals and violent sex offenders to have been more likely to have experienced poor parental childbearing, poor supervision, physical abuse, neglect, and separation from their parents. Increased risk of adult partner violence is associated with exposure to violence between a person's parents while growing up. Taxi rape victims are at last coming forward to share their stories, like a Johannesburg woman raped in a taxi minibus in front of her 10-year-old son. Sons of violent parents are more likely to abuse their partners, and men raised in male-controlled family structures are more likely to become violent adults, to rape women acquaintances, to batter their partners than men raised in loving and compassionate homes. 29-year-old Priska Skalk was found handcuffed in a pool of blood, apparently killed by her boyfriend. A study by the Children's Institute found that 34% of our children will have suffered sexual assault, violence, or abuse by the age of 18 by family members, teachers, and caregivers. 1/3 of children who have been abused or exposed to parental violence become violent adults. It stands to reason that sexual abuse in childhood has therefore been identified as the main risk factor for sexual offending adults. 10-year-old Sipamandla Madikana and 3-year-old Kubern van Wyck's partially burnt bodies were found next to a rubbish dump. Developmental and environmental factors in the family environment play a very large role, with television and movies filled with scenes of women being threatened, raped, beaten, tortured, and murdered. Easy access to pornography is adversely affecting our children's emotional development, portraying a dysfunctional view on intimacy, love, and relationships, where immediate sexual gratification means everything. Maybe the time has arrived for us to seriously consider a type of censorship to reduce the influx of violent images, pornography that's penetrating our homes. Parents need to be more vigilant in screening their children's video preferences and the violent video games. Franziska Blochliger, a teenager, was raped and murdered in the Tokai forest. An international study found that children who watched many hours of violence on television during elementary school tended to exhibit more aggressive behavior as teenagers and were more likely to be arrested for criminal acts as adults. Amanda Tewe and Lelono Fufi, two gorgeous young Intelligence Rhodes University students, were recently murdered. It is unacceptable that women in this country are subjected to such brutal acts of violence and live in fear, terrified to go out, where violence against women has become almost an everyday occurrence. The DA will do everything in its power to promote and ensure the safety of women in this country. The consequences of violence against women are far-reaching, affecting the sustainability of families and of society. As early in 1974, Burgess and Hallstrom described what they termed rape trauma syndrome to describe the psychological aftermath of rape. Victims of partner violence and rape exhibit a variety of psychological symptoms, experiencing shock, denial, disbelief, fear, confusion, and withdrawal. They suffer from depression and attempt suicide. In one community sample, 19% of rape victims had attempted suicide. Other psychological symptoms reported by both victims of rape and partner violence include lowered self-esteem, guilt, shame, anxiety, alcohol and drug abuse and dependence, generalized anxiety, obsessive-compulsive disorder, and post-traumatic stress disorder. I therefore stand before this House as a parliamentarian, but primarily as a woman and a mother who, like all of us, have a crucial role to fulfill in a broken and destroyed society. We cannot allow this to continue in our country any longer. We must, as the society, be the watchdogs. We need to be fearless, and we need to speak out against any abuse. Thembisile Lucia Yende's body was found after 2 weeks in her office with a black bag over her face. As mothers and fathers, we need to bring back the moral fiber in our families and in our communities. Enough is enough, and no longer must we allow destructive social practices to dictate how we live our lives. We need to stop condoning abuse. We need to stop being ashamed of speaking up against abuse. You and I, we must speak up. Let us be the precursor of change, not just 16 days of activism and 1 week of child protection. No, 365 days where we as parents and communities take control of our families, start showing respect for others and the women in our lives. Be the role models for our children. Show them they are precious and that we love, care, and protect them. Above all, let's protect our most vulnerable, our women and our children. I thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Honorable Mashinini, MEC Free State.
Thank you very much, Chair of the NCOP, Deputy Chair of the NCOP. I stand here today in this House with heavy heart, and I'm sure you have realized that amongst the speakers, I'm the first one to speak as a man. I'm out of words and lack of courage to articulate my dismay towards the horrible deeds committed by some men towards women and children abuse. No man, self-respecting man, attacks a woman. Chapter 12 of the National Development Plan prescribes that in 2030, our vision is to make sure that the people living in South Africa must feel safe and have no fear of crime. Everyone must be safe at home, at school, at work, and enjoy the active community life free of fear. Women to walk the street freely, and children can play outside. There is a saying, Chair, that says, a woman is a thing of beauty. His love to her cannot turn into nothingness. If you do that as a man, it means you are not a self-respecting man. Chair, crime against women and children remains an APEC priority for the Free State government, and of course, South Africa at large. Crime associated with women and children vary from common assault, assault to commit grievous bodily harm, rape, attempted rape, sexual assault, and murder. The violent nature of these crimes have recently occupied, and we all know about this, social media space. As such, has instilled fear amongst our people. Social media is a buzz with incident reported, albeit that in many have identified as baselip. And I want to elaborate on this point. One, the incident reported in the Free State recently, where at the University of the Free State, it was portrayed that 2 females were kidnapped, and immediately we follow up the matter. Because we have agreed as the province that we are going to leave no stone unturned in dealing with any perpetrator of violence against women and children abuse. Here's the setback. At the end, the investigation revealed that that was not true. 2, the second incident on social media created the impression that a mother, and this was on the social media, kidnapped her daughter from her home in Banesflay. Again, we follow this matter. Fact of the matter is that the mother took her daughter to Cape Town here and reported at the nearest police station after being told about the social media coverage. I'm raising these areas that today, Chair, in this House we are debating what must be done in South Africa to deal with this challenge of violence against women. But we must be careful. Social media must not be used to perpetrate the matter. Chair, from a statistical perspective, in the Free State. We have shown that decline in 2012, 2013. With regard to violence against women and children abuse, we've shown a decline of 7% decrease. But I want to speak on those sticky areas which shows an increase. And I'll later indicate what are we doing as a province, because it doesn't help to speak and do nothing. You have to make sure that you come up with a mechanism to deal with the matter. We have experienced an increase in contact sexual offenses. We have experienced an increase in abduction. These are the areas that we are spending, including others, but these are the areas that in the Free State we are spending and leaving no stone unturned to make sure that the perpetrators are brought to book. Having said so, Chair, is that I need to indicate that there are areas that we also in the Free State have identified as areas which actually contribute towards the increase in these crimes against women. That area is an area of an abuse of alcohol and drugs. See Tete Inyani where it is necessary. The use of drugs is the matter. The second one that we have identified, illegal closing times of places that sells liquor. When the license says you close at a particular time, you'll find that they close in the early hours of the following morning. That contributes to abuse against women and children. Another area is that we have identified dark places, street lights that are not there. That creates an opportunity for these criminals to continue with their work. You call a spade a spade. The buildings that are abandoned, that are not being used, they create a heaven for this criminal to use it. We have to deal with those areas. And the last one, and I've heard speakers before me have indicated apathy by parents. Yabona ke uma ungumama noma ungutata, take care of your children. Know where your children goes. Uma ungumama ungutata, take an interest to make sure that at a particular time all your children are inside the house. If we are not going to face these issues that are before us, we'll continuously talk beside and not deal with the matter. And we have said this is a matter that we have to look at as the Free State. We are working around the clock to engage these crimes, and I indicated earlier on with more emphasis on those that have shown an increase. Now, steps taken to deal with this matter. Men and women that are in blue, we have created a unit in the province. I can tell you now, one of the areas that is in the media, which is in Bloemfontein, Heidedal. I spent no time every week looking and monitoring the progress in that area. I know another area that we are increasing our presence there is the place called Small Street. Focusing on that area again to make sure that we bring these levels of crime against women and children abuse. The next area that we are also focusing on, ingxaki ke sihlalo into yokuba when you are a detective, you get a case, but the statement that you write, it's not the statement that you'll be able to win the case. You said that is the matter that we must focus on and deal with it to make sure that the statement that is written can be able to bring down the perpetrator to book. It is an open secret that some of the people that are brought or taken to court, you know what angers our society is that a person, a perpetrator, is arrested. The next day, you find that perpetrator on the street. The only thing that you have to do, make sure that you tighten. And one of the areas that we have identified is to make sure that our detectives are able to write statements, and those statements that are able to make sure that magistrates are able to take a decision. Part of the programs that we are engaging on to deal with this matter is to visit the school. We have created a unit of young policemen and women that goes into different schools, speaks to these young people, because by the way, if you can have a person that is almost equal to you, that can talk to you and relate these stories to you. That's the unit that we have created in the province of young policemen that are dealing with them. We are also working together with the churches. Because a crime against women and children, it's no more a government matter alone, it's a societal matter. It cannot be fought by a certain section of the society. It has to be fought by the entire society. The awareness campaign, the bullying, teenage pregnancy, human trafficking, drugs and kidnapping. Let me relate the story. In the road between Welkom and Bloemfontein, Chair.
As you do that, MEC, can you as well?
Okay. These are the areas, Chair, that we are working on. They have the multidisciplinary task team to deal with the human trafficking, daily and weekly analysis of crime patterns, threat to inform the deployment and operations, strict application of the Domestic Violence Act, and enhancing sector policing, implementation of the Provincial Crime Prevention Framework, and resolutions on the Youth Summit. We will continue to make sure that we deal with this matter, Chair. Recently, I can indicate in the road N1 between the Free State and the Eastern Cape. Thank you very much, and I'm sure my colleague in the Eastern Cape would remember that we have arrested one foreign national, a man and woman, with drugs to the value of 450,000. You will not pass the Free State. If you pass, it will be by your luck. It will be back. I can talk on the other areas, Chair. As I conclude, we need to make sure that it becomes impossible for the victims to withdraw the cases. We need to make sure that victims report all cases of domestic violence. We must also intensify the campaign against the use of alcohol, drugs, and so on and so forth. Chair, no man self-respecting attacks or harm a woman, because a woman is a thing of beauty. Its loveliness will never turn into nothingness. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I've noticed that we've got too many presiding officers in the House. But may I also, I will forgive the special delegates, especially if it is a maiden speech. There's nothing that stops me as a presiding officer to give the member 2 minutes or so to wrap up his or her speech. Equally so, may I therefore, as I call on special delegates and MECs, we've got a clock there. Let it guide you as well. That it's time to wrap up. That will assist us not to have too many presiding officers in the House. Thank you very much. Can we then proceed with the debate by calling on Honorable Zwane to continue the debate?
Thank you, Chairperson or Deputy Chairperson of Council, honorable members, guests, and special delegates from the different provinces. I see my MEC for DSD from KZN, Mama Wizitusi, the Chief Whip, and everybody. Good afternoon. This is a very difficult and a sad topic to debate, Chairperson, because it is an issue that the ANC-led government has tried to address using different instruments and tools, but it doesn't seem to abate. Instead, the perpetrators are sharpening their game day in and day out to demonstrate violent acts against women and children. A measure of society's advancement is how it treats its women and children. Since the start of this year, a shocking number of women and children have been brutally killed in our country, many of them at the hands of their own boyfriends or loved ones, their relatives, or men that they knew, and heartless criminals. Allow me, Honorable Chair, to take this opportunity to convey our heartfelt condolences to the families of all women and children whose lives perished since the beginning of this year. Although I may not be able to enumerate all of them, but I do want to convey our condolences. The number is too big for me to be able to enumerate all of them, but I will cite some names just to demonstrate that we are taking note and we are aware and we are concerned, and we are going to take steps to actually deal with the situation and come victorious. I would like, therefore, to dedicate my speech to these women whose stories are very tragic. I want to refer to a quotation by Chinua Achebe when he says that, "For as long as lions do not have the historians, the story of the hunt will always be in the favor of the hunter." Our story as women, sad as it is, we need to tell it to the world for everybody to know the extent to which we are suffering as women. I want to dedicate this speech firstly to Karabo Mkwena, a 22-year-old whose body was found in a thicket, and we want to applaud the fact that her boyfriend has been charged for murder. Sandile Manswe, a 27-year-old. I also want to refer to and convey condolences to Lerato Mloyi, a 27-year-old who was murdered and her body found near Naledi in Soweto. I also want to refer to Popi Kwabe, a 24-year-old who was found shot and died in hospital. I also want to refer to Bongeka Pungula, a 20-year-old. She was found dead in Soweto, and the upper part of the body was brutally murdered, and the suspect has since been apprehended. I want to refer to Mavis Mabala, a 25-year-old. Her body was found in the bushes outside Panzima village in Polokwane. May her soul rest in peace. I want to refer to Priska Skalk, a 29-year-old, whose body was found in Kempton Park. and the perpetrator has been arrested, the boyfriend. Mananki Anna Boys, a 28-year-old, in Boipotong, he also was murdered. Nicola Penar, a 20-year-old, the boyfriend Jacobus Oosthuizen has also been apprehended and charged for murder. Akhona Njokana, a 31-year-old, in Giblands, in KZN. She was also murdered and shot dead by the boyfriend. Tapelo, Ramotorong, murdered by the boyfriend, and also in Tabazimbi, and the boyfriend has been brought to book. Meisim Life, a 36-year-old, was murdered somewhere near Hammanskral. Stembile Mdluli, a 37-year-old, was murdered also in Sapi near Mpumalanga. Staksha Arense, a 11-year-old, the naked body was found, and the perpetrator, who was a family member, has been arrested. Randy Tracy Roman, a 13-year-old, again a minor, in Lavender Hills was murdered, and there hasn't been anything said about arresting the perpetrator. Iya Piamile, a 6-year-old, the body was found in a house of the aunt in Kailicha. The two men were arrested for this. Janet Tindi, a 34-year-old, was found murdered in the West Rand, and she was 5 months pregnant. Honorable Chairperson, in April, a 34-year-old unidentified woman was raped, stoned, and set alight, allegedly by a group of 7 men. And on May 13, and as yet an unidentified woman was found on a dumping site in Mofolo, some 7 kilometers away from Naledi. I am not going to be able to exhaust the entire list, Chairperson, but this is meant to demonstrate that we are not talking a myth here. Women are dying, and they're dying in drones. Another issue that perturbed us quite a lot as women, and it raised a lot of concern, was the issue of murdering of women just before the local government elections. In KZN, I can count to about 6 to 7 women that were shot dead, and some of them were shot in full view of their husbands and children. And now this shows the extent to which our society does not care about the plight of women, and it is very, very painful. There is a lot of domestic violence, and I think we need to tighten the laws and maybe even intensify the verdict, intensify the sentences. 10 years for murder is nothing. It should be about 20, 30, 40 years even, or even a life sentence. Because that person has taken a life and he has caused stress and strife in that particular family for generations. So the sentences that are meted out are not enough in my own point of view, and they need to be intensified and strengthened. The ANC-led government has actually put institutional mechanisms over and above the Constitution, over and above the pieces of legislation that have been passed to ensure that women and children are protected against violence. There has been institutional mechanisms to ensure that there is further protection. These are institutions such as the Sexual Offences Court, Tutuzela Care Centers, Family, Child and Sexual Offences Units, Domestic Violence Courts, Correctional Supervision Boards, and others that have been established in order to create space and provide institutional arrangements for recourse and to promote women's human rights. Let me now address women out there endaweni zethu la siphuma khona emakhaya. Ngiyafuna ukusho bomama bantu besifazane ukuthi kufuneka siqwashe ake silumke. Okokuqala nje le ndaba yokuthi masiyofaka amacala okuhlukunyezwa njengabomama einkantolo sifike siabuzwe abomthetho is an issue that we need to take up quite vigorously, because that is infringing on our rights and threatening us. Indaba mawuyofaka icala kuthiwe lapha hayi athi amaphoyisa hayi ake nihambe nokhulumisana mhlambe ningakwazi uxolelana nibonisane. No, uma kufuneka uyofaka icala faka icala, ngoba udaba olwakho akulona lamaphoyisa. Amaphoyisa afuneka akulekelela kusize ukuba uhambe necala uzufike la ufuna ufika khona. Lokhu kuncengwa kokuthi hayi ngihoxise mama icala awuboni ukuthi ubaba wenza iphutha. We are not going to take that line down. And then the other issue okufuna besiqwashisane ngayo udaba lwezingane zethu. Le violence noma lokuhlukunyezwa akubhekisiwe kuthina sodwa njengabantu besifazane nabantu bethu. Uyabona ke le ndaba yokuvakasha yokudedela izingane zivakashe noma ikuphi. Nakwamalume la ungazi khona iphilwa kanjani. Nakwa auntie la ungazi khona iphilwa kanjani. Nakwamkhulu nakwagogo nakwamngani wakho la ungazi khona iphilwa impiloni uzolithezwa linenkume. Kufanele wazi umama ukuthi ingane yakho ikuphi ngasikhatsini. Yenzani inobani ngoba izwe libi. Udaba lokuthumela izingane uthi nje hayi hamba nesitolo sokuhwalele izingane zamantombazane, leyo nto leyo ayisenziwa nje, ayisenziwa ngoba izingane mayiphuma manje ngisho kulanga phesha komgwaqo esitolo, anything can happen between the house and the shop next door. One case, particular case that I want to refer to is a case in a garage in KZN. The mother and the father of the child get out of the car. They leave the children in the car. They get into the garage to get some refreshments. They took quite a while. It means they were buying some lunch and so on. Only to find out that when they go out, the children are no longer in the car. Now, when the police started the search around the area, because they knew that whoever would have taken the children, fanele eduze akakahambi kakhulu. Kukhona abantu esithi masuba kumamall sipaka basibuke. Uma ushiya ingane emotweni, unto you. Uyofika sasingasekho. Masiqwashe silumke. Uma ifika amaphoyisa ehambe ehlisa umgwaqo afike laqala khona imoba afika nampa abantu besilisa ababili amadoda alengisa ucheckers. Lo checkers usuqonsa igazi. The children have been murdered. They've been taken and they've been murdered. Why? Because of our own carelessness as parents. That is why I say, no mangabuse mall ke la khona amaphoyisa that are patrolling in a mall. But still make sure that when you get into the mall, you take your children. Say kwaba khona nama trolley, put your children in the trolley, get into the mall, buy whatever you buy, because kukhona who are specifically there to look for the young ones. Ngizothi ke kumakhosikazi ngiwaqashisa laphaya emakhaya asikuthandi lokhu esikhuluma ngakho la. Asikuthandi lokhu okwenzekayo ngabantu abethu nangabantu besifazane. Asibambisaneni. Ukhona okhulumile ngaphambilini kwami wathi lolu daba kulona likahulumeni. Ngoba labantu abaperpetrator le violence against women are born of women. And it goes to the manner in which we bring out our children. We bring up our children. Ingane zethu sizikhulisa kanjani ngaphansi kweziphi izimo. Lezi ngane ezisemajele ezivalelwe eboshiwe because they've raped, they are born of women. And sizikhulise kanjani ingane zethu ukuba zingathi take part in those activities. We have to take part of the blame. Women have suffered. Ngizophinda ngivale ngoChino Achebe when he says, when suffering comes to a woman, and then suffering says, I've come, and a woman says, no, please, suffering, go away. You've got no place here. I don't have a place for you. and suffering, you say, I am here because I brought my own stool. I want to say, women, fight against suffering. We have got all it takes to fight for your rights. Thank you, Chairperson.
Thank you very much. Honorable Ngwenya, can you continue the debate?
Honorable Chairperson, honorable members, delegates, fellow South Africans, it is with such sadness and heavy heart that we discuss what we are discussing today as women of South Africa. Over the past few months, the depth of the crisis of violent abuse of women and girl children burst its ugly head in public for everyone to see. The stories we have heard have been shocking, they have been gruesome, and they have more than anything in the recent past opened society's eyes to the depth of moral decay in our society, brought about by a multitude of causes. Yesterday, Utemsile Yende was found dead in her office at Eskom, having been missing for almost 2 weeks. On Sunday, a 30-year-old Unati Madokieni was found brutally murdered, her eyes gouged out and raped in Langa Township here in Cape Town. 2 weeks ago, a 14-month-old baby was raped and killed by her own father in Khayelitsha. 27-year-old Lerato Moloi from Naledi was raped, killed, her body burnt beyond recognition. We know about Karabo Mokoena, who was also killed by her boyfriend and burnt. Early in May, Iya Payamile's mutilated body was discovered in a toilet just 3 blocks from her home in Khayelitsha. These are just a few of a number of cases where women and children have been violently murdered in this country over the past month. It is reported that 60 women have been murdered in Gauteng alone in the last 2 months. What is wrong with our society? What makes men so violent towards women and children? What is particularly wrong with black men on whose hands most of these violent criminals acts have happened? We know that violence knows no color, and that men in general enjoy privileges they are not entitled to just on the basis of their gender. This is an outcome of an overly patriarchal society we've been raised in, which teaches men dangerous notions of masculinity. It is these forms of masculinity which make it okay for young boys to use violence to assert their manness. The idea that masculinity is defined by demonstrations of violent and aggressive behavior poses a serious problem, not only to women, as many would think, but to men themselves as well. Whether it be at a university fraternity, in the military, or even in high school sports teams, it is asked of a young man that he engages in violent acts. By doing so, he not only proves his strength and virality, but demonstrates to his willingness to be a loyal member of the group called men. Through this, the message being sent to him is that if he does not conform to that particular definition of masculinity, he does not deserve to be considered as one of the guys, and therefore unofficially loses his status as a so-called real man. The notion of brutality perpetuates the social construct that men's only recourse to solving problems is by the means of violence. So, Chairperson, if we need to deal with the problem of violence against women and children, we, as a society, must deal thoroughly with the system of patriarchy, so pervasive in this country. We must, with the same energy we used to fight against colonialism and apartheid, fight to dismantle the system that gives men unearned privileges just because they are men. That must entail dealing with backward cultures practices such as uktwala and forced polygamy. It must entail strengthening our laws to make any form of violence against women and children a frowned upon act in our society. It must entail educating and re-educating our police to never let any reported case of women abuse go unattended. It must entail going to every corner of society, as government, as civil society, as political parties, as churches, stokvels, and educate our people that violence against women and children militate against the core of our society. We as the economic freedom fighters urge all our members across the length and breadth of this country to stand firm in fighting this scourge. They must be ready to defend all women and children, no matter what political party they come from. This crisis demands that we set aside our political differences and face this problem face on. We ask that the government leads a multi-sectoral process to engage with all sectors of society to come up with grassroots-based solutions to this program. We condemn the violence against women and children with the strongest possible voice. And to all males in South Africa, we gave birth to you. We brought you up. We showed you nothing but love and care. We still take care of you. Why do you treat us this way? Think about us. We are your mothers, your sisters, and we love you. Thank you, Chairperson.
Thank you very much. Honorable Manopole. Honorable Manopole, can you continue the debate?
Thank you, Chairperson. Honorable Chairperson, Chief Whip, Minister, and Deputy Ministers, NSOP, and special delegates, and ladies and gentlemen. Dumela ma Afrika. While we mark the Child Protection Week, we have to note that this debate is taking place against the backdrop of the escalation of gender-based violence, which affects women and children in our country. It is notable that this scourge of violence has become more brutal and it is worrisome. It seems as if it's a reflection of lack of moral fiber. A single society, we women do not form a society separate from men. There is only one society. It is made up of both men, women, and men. A woman who share a problem with an anxiety with our men and join hands with them to remove the social ills and obstacles to progress. If we can master this, I think we can eliminate most of the social challenges and gender-based struggles. ANC-led government, in recognizing the scourge of vulnerable groups, it has introduced comprehensively and expansively statutaries. All these legislations aiming in addressing and combating gender-based violence and sexual offenses against women and children, and aligned to the international human rights instruments, which South Africa is party to. Those are legislations pertaining to the protection of vulnerable groups, the Child Justice Act of 2008, Child Act 2005, Criminal Law, Sexual Offense-Related Matters Amendment Act of 2007, Maintenance Act of 1998, the Domestic Violence Act of 1998, Protection from Harassment Act of 2011. All these acts were ensured to fight the scourge of violence, gender-based violence. The cluster of the justice, crime prevention, security are and will remain the catalyst of the peace and security. They are key in implementing Mangaung 53rd conference of the ANC, 53rd conference of the ANC, and its resolution. We should ensure that, without doubt, they put effort to ensure that all those who are South Africans feel safe and feel safe, particularly women and children. For them to ensure that, they have to realize those by ensuring that implementing all about legislations to ensure they combat gender-based crime. The sexual offense courts were re-established in 2013 by Department of Justice and Correctional Services. By March 2017, 54 sexual offense courts had been established. Sexual offense courts are located and upgraded in regional courts and Department of Justice. These courts provide specialized victim support services to ensure and reduce chance of secondary trauma to victims. The case handling time and improve conviction rates. They are especially trained officials and equipped to ensure that there are also special room for victims to testify and private waiting room for the adult and children. The domestic violence is not recorded by SAPS in a specific crime category. Therefore, it does not reflect on national stats. When cases of domestic violence are reported in the police, they are recorded under the different categories of such as assault, malicious damage to property, pointing of firearms, and murder, which should be taken into. It's just an unfortunate, Chair of the Council, that the Minister of Justice is not forming part of this debate. With regards to the domestic and sex violence conviction, the report of National Prosecuting Authority of 2014 and 15 reflects low rate. Cases went to trial but resulted acquitted as compared to cases went to court. This results in a low conviction rate in sexual offense cases. In terms of the domestic violence, the picture is, I'm hesitant to say it is bleak. In 2014 and 2015, 2,604 new application of protection orders were received and civil processes, and 163,79,000 interim protection orders were granted. In the same period, 14,533 new domestic violence criminal cases were registered, of which the majority of 8,645 were withdrawn. This indicates multifaceted issues at play that are barriers in criminal justice process that can legal justice and victims themselves of ensuring that they are no longer confident to go through the case or having the strength, even the mediation between the families and the perpetrators. So when we see the cases will be withdrawn. The Child Act and the child courts, approximately 737 children's courts in South Africa are established and are registered to date, and they're supposed to be ensuring that the National Register of Sex Offenders are implemented. The National Register of Sex Offenders, as part of combating and prevalence of sex offenders in South Africa, the Department of Justice and Constitutional Development has implemented a National Register of Offenders since the 30th of June 2009. The registers are proactive. The registers are not proactive. A crime must be registered, and to ensure that they are registered on this. And an offender must be first listed before the offender is listed, before the offender is listed. Hence, that there is no impact on ensuring that it's combating the crime. Therefore, because of those provisions, the register requires offenders to be convicted before they are registered. The consequence of this, very few sex offenders will be listed in the registers. Moreover, the provision of the registers are narrow and seek to prevent registered offenders from being employed in positions where there may be access to children. I would like to make recommendations that I think that the Department of Justice should take into consideration. Because of the National Register of Sex Offenders only recognize the offense of children and people who are disabled, but does not make provision for rape. Furthermore, those concerns were emphasized and expressed by AU reported that the names of the children convicted for sexual crimes are automatically placed in sexual offenders register, provided the sexual offenses are act and should be kept there for life. The Tutuzela centers that are there since 2015, 55 centers are active and operational. This model of Tutuzela care centers has been recognized by the former UN Secretary General Ban Ki-moon in 2011, as a world best practice in field of gender-based violence and the management and the response of the conviction in the prosecution of sexual offenses. As a result, the convictions were recorded 60.7% in 2011 and 2012, and 65.9% in 2013-11. I would like to highlight that what gives me hope by ensuring that there are some mitigations that are there in place. The implementation of the integrated justice system. Today in the Department of Justice, in the select committees of justice, has reported that in 3 months' time they will be implementing this system. But however, there are some weaknesses. They have highlighted that the protection orders are not in their priorities. I would like to raise that for them to request that they should ensure that the protection orders in their priorities, because this will go the long way. The issue of this, the interim protection order, when individuals have received the protection orders and wants to report the case, when you call the police station, the police will ask you, do you have a protection order in your possession? When you say no, they will not be able to assist you. Hence, I'm asking that those integrated justice systems should include and prioritize the protection order. Thank you.
Honorable Tuse, MEC KZN.
Thank you, Honorable Chairperson. Chairperson of the NCOP, Honorable Thandim Dise, the Deputy Chairperson, the Minister of Police, Honorable Mbalula, permanent and special delegates of the NCOP. I want to fully agree with the Chairperson of NCOP that we are a nation in mourning. As the province of KwaZulu-Natal, we firstly wish to extend our appreciation to the Chairperson of the National Council of Provinces, Honorable Thandim Dise, for inviting us to participate on this important debate, an important debate on a national crisis. We view this initiative as an important platform for us as lawmakers and public representatives to engage and interrogate the current challenges faced by women and children in our society. We should do so by bearing in mind that at this very moment, in every part of the world, from sleepy towns and villages to gigantic cities, girls are being born. These girls will soon be looking to us as elders and leaders for guidance on what their hopes, dreams, and responsibilities will be in this world. Today's debate must not just be a debate, but must be the beginning of all of us, regardless of party lines, where we all converge and speak in one voice. This must be a debate that will be followed by tangible action in fighting the scourge of women and child abuse in this country. Chairperson, it is undeniable fact that under this government's leadership, South Africa has, in the past 23 years, rolled its sleeves and enacted a raft of legislations and programs to protect and empower women and children. We must, however, be brutally frank and honest and admit that though a lot has been achieved, much more needs to be done in addressing gender oppression, patriarchy, sexism, racism, structural oppression, and completely eradicate the legacy of triple oppression of women, in particular Black women. The unfortunate reality is that every minute and every hour, a woman is abused in this country. Most painful is the fact that most of them suffer in the hands of the people they have invested their trust on, their partners. The recent upsurge in incidents of rape, murder, and abuse of women and children reveals the real nature of the society we are and the plight women are still subjected to 23 years after the attainment of freedom and democracy. In a shocking report by the World Health Organization in 2012, it found that 65% of women in South Africa had experienced spousal abuse. This means that women are mostly abused and their rights violated by their intimate partners. Professor Nima Abrams, Deputy Director at Gender and Health Unit at the Medical Research Council, further reveals that 1 in every 4 women is physically abused by her intimate partner. Every 6 hours, a woman is killed by her current or former intimate partner. On the other side, the SAPS report in September 2015 revealed that a total of 53,617 sexual offense cases were reported. This translates into 147 cases a day. Chairperson, this House must today come up with responses to these challenges and give the message of hope to those vulnerable bleeding women who have been victims of abuse. This reminds me of the brutal killing of Karabo Mokoena, Bongeka Pungula, Popi Kwabe. These were 2 friends who were murdered in Johannesburg. They were from KZN, and many others who have been victims of violence and whose right to life were taken by those who claim to love them. Most recently in KZN Kwambonambi, a young woman who is with albinism was murdered allegedly by the father of her 5-month-old baby. Nowadays, a girl child cannot walk in the street at night because of fear and the unwarranted state of emergency declared by criminals who have no mercy. Chairperson, how long will this continue? Chairperson, as the ANC-led government, we vehemently condemn all forms of attack and abuse directed at women and children, and we view our democracy as meaningless if, as a nation, we fail to provide protection to them. As a caring government, we have a historic mission to ultimately create a non-racial and non-sexist society and to destroy the culture and practice inharmonious with the new and future society. We will be abandoning our revolution if we don't continue fighting for this noble goal. At the opening of the first parliament in 1994, President Nelson Mandela eloquently declared, I quote, "Freedom cannot be achieved unless women have been emancipated from all forms of oppression. Our endeavors must be about the liberation of the woman, the emancipation of the man, and the liberty of the child." I close quote. We therefore welcome the call made by the National Executive Committee of the ANC over the weekend that street committees must be revived and people must report these heinous incidents. Indeed, we cannot continue keeping quiet. We also welcome the NEC Bold's leadership in encouraging victims to speak out against abuse. We hope this will go a long way in exposing perpetrators of violence. Indeed, the leader of the society has spoken. Ours is to heed the call. We're calling on all the people and all sectors to close ranks. By this, we mean there should be no incident that goes without being reported in community structures and the police. We also mean there should be no incident that will go unpunished. We also welcome the commitment by the Minister of Police and Honorable Fikile Mbalula, who this week visited our province, KwaZulu-Natal, for his commitment in reviving and strengthening the Family Violence, Child Protection, and Sexual Offences Unit. We further appeal that such specialized units must be available in all police stations, even those in remote areas, to prevent some of these incidents from happening. As government, we'll continue to make interventions and develop programs aimed at looking after the victims of sexual offenses and other related abuses. This will entail amending laws if necessary and introduction of new legislation. We further call the criminal justice system to review sentences given to sexual offenders. The view of this government is that maximum sentence, including life imprisonment, is a suitable sentence to offenders of such crime. Our view is informed by the fact that after such incidents, most women and children are left with life-lasting experiences, which at times changes their lives completely. It is for this reason that Government of the People, as led by the ANC, has embarked on a number of initiatives aimed at protecting and empowering women and children. I will only mention a few because of time that has been allocated to me. These include the following: KwaZulu-Natal, 365 days coordinating and monitoring strategic framework for the eradication of gender-based violence. KwaZulu-Natal implementation plan for the eradication of gender-based violence, the anti-rape strategic coordination and monitoring plan, the forensic nursing strategic plan. Chairperson, in our vigorous attempts to deal with gender-based violence, the Department of Social Development has developed various strategies to respond to the scourge through the provision of shelters for abused women and children, White Door Centers of Hope. Currently, the department is negotiating with eThekwini Municipality towards the establishment of a Khuseleka one-stop center for victims of crime and violence in Inanda, eThekwini. The department has further rolled out capacity building of frontline workers, the social workers, the nurses, police, and educators on working with victims of gender-based violence and preventing secondary victimization, including promoting the involvement of men as active partners for women and girls' human rights and as agents of change in the fight against gender-based violence and HIV and AIDS. The provision of psychosocial support to all victims of crime and violence remains a central feature. We're also going to be embarking on a campaign mobilizing all men to be active in the campaign denouncing such heinous crimes against women and children. We challenge all men to join the campaign, saying, #not in our name. Real men must stand up. There is also a responsibility to teach boys on the importance of respecting women and developing a caring culture within them so that they become the first line of defense for women. We'll also be leading in our province mass actions, mobilizing all sectors of the society to be active against the scourge. Our conviction is that if we act as a collective, we will make a difference. Most importantly, we must, as women, come together to reclaim our role in the society and play a leading role in confronting all social menaces facing our society. As the stalwart of the ANC and the architect of our freedom, President Oliver Tambo said, addressing the women's section of the ANC in Luanda, Angola in 1981, I quote, "They, women, have a duty to liberate us men from antique concepts and attitude about the place and role of women in society and in the development and direction of our revolution," close quote. Equally, as observed by President Tambo, the role of liberating men to end attacks on women remains our central task. In conclusion, I want to reiterate this government's commitment to doing everything we possibly can to tackle all forms of violence and discrimination against women and girls in South Africa. Chairperson and honorable members, we dare not fail. I thank you.
Honorable Kaila. continue the debate.
Thank you, Chairperson. Nakuthethwa elihlobo Chairperson uske ngonqene novumbano indoda. Izimanga ezenziwa ngamadoda. Ikuzihlungu kakhulu. Honorable Chairperson, the United Democratic Movement joins millions of South Africans to declare violence and abuse of women and a girl child a crime against humanity. Violence against women and girls is rooted in gender-based discrimination, social norms, and gender stereotypes that perpetuate such violence. The recent spate of gruesome murder of girls and infants has a devastating effect on girls, women, and society in general and must be rejected by all. As a nation, we must never tolerate crime. The crime against women and girls must be stopped now. We must do everything legal to prevent it from happening and address its root and structural causes. Prevention must entail supporting the implementation of laws, policies, and programs that place strong focus on the promotion of gender equality and women empowerment in the enjoyment of human rights. Working together as women, girls, men, boys, we must accelerate progress in preventing and ending violence against women and girls. Awareness raising and community mobilization, including through our traditional form of communication, the mainstream and social media must constitute part of our strategy. The Not in My Name campaign by men must be part of our daily life. It must collective responsibility and obligation of both men and boys to prevent and end violence against women and girls. Working with faith leaders, traditional leaders, communities, we must change the social norms and harmful practices, acknowledge and act against gender injustice. Governments must too ensure that the girl child is protected and make available all institutional functions to give security to the girls. Abuse of girls through child labor is illegal, and we should have a responsibility to monitor the labor market and ensure that this is abolished. There must be a concerted drive to ensure that the girls enjoy full equal access to education with necessary support to keep them focused. A girl child must be taught and encouraged to accept this minor, and all violence is a crime must be immediately reported. Banbaguchi Lendo Ibalekile, one of the MSC from Eastern Cape. If you remember, one of the most gruesome killings happened in Port St. John's. Endithi noba ndiyalala ndiyicinge nandiphelelwe kukuthonga. Apho umalume umntana ona 13 years abulele umntana wamdla watya inyama. These are things that happen on a daily basis. Every day, novula iphepha, there's somebody killed. And not just killed, gruesomely killed by men. It is time that we as men here as well, when there is violence, we must we must talk against that violence. Bantu abasezilalini, hlukana nothuma abantwana babothenga utywala. Yenzeka loo nto leyo. Mayiphele into yothuma umntwana makasele utywala, nento yosela phambi kwabantwana irongo. It creates a problem. It's not only the police, society at large must also do their side of work. For instance, if kuyaliwa next door neighbor madoda okanye ninento eniyiqaphelayo, voice, thethani madoda. Learn to love women. If okanye zandi fundani ubathanda abafazi and appreciate abomama, because umama ungwenye is talking the truth, basizele basikhulisa. There's nobody osekulo mhlaba ngaphandle kubana azalwe ngumfazi or everybody uzelwe ngumuntu ongumama, so masibahloniphe, uthanda ungathandi. So masike sifundeni bana noko siziphathe kakuhle siye kuhlazeka and come up with programs ezonceda abantu. Inkosi.
Thank you very much. Honorable Skosana Pumalanga, Chair of Chairs.
Honorable Deputy Chairperson, thank you for the opportunity, Honorable Chairperson. Minister Mbalula, Mrs. Present here, permanent delegates, my colleagues, special delegates, distinguished guests. It is with great sense of honor and privilege, Honorable Chair, to get this opportunity to participate in this most important debate about women and children abuse, which is impacting negatively to the society as we are gathering in this People's Parliament. I think we must, at all material times, work towards resolving issues affecting people of this country. The first president of the democratic South Africa, Utata Nelson Mandela, analyzed children as the most vulnerable citizens in any society and the greatest of our treasures. And borrowing from one of his speeches, and this is what I want to quote him on, the children must at last play in the open field, no longer tortured by the pangs of hunger or ravaged by disease or threatened with the scourge of ignorance, molestation and abuse, and no longer required to engage in deeds whose gravity exceeds the demands of their tender years, close quote. We also remember, Honorable Chair, his words on women in May 2002, and I want to quote him when he says, "It's a unique woman who can turn the whole world around and make it the best living place in the experience. For every woman and girl violently attacked, we reduce our human," close quote. It's on these bases that we are condemning the barbaric killing of young women and children in South Africa that is so prevalent, and the moment we are calling upon the police to arrest all the wrongdoers. Honorable Deputy Chairperson, the women and children abuse, especially young girls, is a serious cause for concern in our country. And the recent statistics show 1 in 3 children in South Africa experience violence, while 1 in 5 children of school-going age experience sexual abuse. The country is faced daily by horrific reports of violence against young girls and children, and in Mpumalanga province alone, has more than half of the children reported a lifetime prevalence of physical abuse by caregivers, teachers, and relatives. The incidence of abuse suffered by many children and women reflects the serious need of an intensified moral regeneration program for society as the whole, for a collaboration between government and the community at large, so as we are able to arrest this social problem that is a grave concern to all people living in South Africa and the world. These horrific crimes are yet another sign that violence is a daily reality for too many innocent women and children living in South Africa. The South African police will also need to intensify its work on calling community members to report any suspicion of child abuse, neglect, or exploitation of children and young girls. On Deputy Chair, the well-written document of the ANC called the Strategic and Tactic have thus been aimed at addressing the 3 contradictions of race, class, and gender. These antagonisms found expression in national oppression based on race, class, super exploitation directed against black workers, and the triple oppression of the masses of women based on their race, their class, and their gender. We have not yet achieved all our goals. Our society is still plagued by instances of racism and gender based on social patriarchy. We can do more to promote democracy, and too many people are still living in poverty, which makes them to be vulnerable to the so-called blessers. Our biggest challenge is to build unity and to celebrate our diversity as a country. We have a revolutionary duty to eradicate poverty, address joblessness, and fight ever pervasive inequality so as we can be able to achieve united, non-racial, non-sexist, democratic, and prosperous South Africa. The ANC government has declared 2017 as the year of Oliver Reginald Tambo, as it would be turning 100 years this year. Borrowing from one of his speeches, he said, and I want to quote him, "Our fight is for justice. We cannot cease until we have won, as we will in time and in achieving human rights for all men and women in Southern Africa, we'll be making our contribution to the fight for human rights and freedom for the world," close quote. Since the past 23 years ago, the democratically elected government, led by the African National Congress, set out a new path to build a new and a better South Africa for all in order to continue where Oliver Reginald Tambo has left. Honorable Deputy Chairperson, I wish to request this August House to close ranks and fight against women and children abuse as it violates the women and children's rights and negatively affects their ability to lead a meaningful life and quality life in our communities. For a better community, for a better South Africa, for a better Africa, and a better world. Honorable Deputy Chair, I thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Honorable Kaula.
Honorable Deputy Chairperson, Honorable Minister, MECs, colleagues, in the recent past weeks and months, South Africa has experienced the rising proportions of incidents of violence against women and children in almost all the provinces. The IFP denounces these actions in the strongest possible terms. The IFP calls upon all men and women of goodwill in our country, calls upon all justice and security agencies in the country, calls upon the religious denominations, calls upon all relevant NGOs and NPOs, calls upon government and all other peace-loving forces of our country to rally together in fighting this indespicable scourge. Reports suggest that up to about 34% of the children of our country become victims of sexual violence and physical abuse before they reach the age of 18. South Africa is also rated as amongst the top countries with the highest rate of sexual violence. It is estimated that more or less 100,000 rape cases take place in South Africa every year. Recently, the incidents of boyfriends murdering their partners in the country have reached alarming proportions. Incidents of young girls dying at the hands of their uncles or people they trust in the community have also reached alarming proportions. While on the rise, some of these incidents of domestic violence against women are said to be underreported due to lack of effective public support services in our institutions. In some corners of our country, the multi-related propaganda and meat-related propaganda have given rise to these proportions. The human rights of our women folk and our girl children in the country are extensively violated. It is for these reasons that the IFP calls upon the security and justice agencies of our country to tighten the screws in the application of the law. Abusers and child murderers should not just be easily granted bail in our courts to the total neglect of the feelings of the victims and their relatives, friends, and community. In isiZulu, we say, a child becomes a child of the community. We also say that umuntu ngumuntu ngabantu. Therefore, when one member of the community is shaken, the whole community is shaken. On the other hand, the communities of our country must stand up and remove these rotten potatoes who commit these erroneous crimes. Some of these culprits are people who are known to the communities. The IFP urges communities to stand up and protect their own. Before it gets too late and escalates to uncontrollable levels, the police must also wake up and protect communities. We would not like this situation to worsen to the levels where communities take up the law into their own hands. But it will soon get there if legal protection is this scarce. Just last week in the House, we had a budget debate on police and IPID. In the debate, the IFP reminded the Minister of Police about the lack of visible policing in rural areas and townships of our country. And this is where most of these incidents are taking place. Iqembu leNkatha Yenkululeko liyafisa ukuphinde ligcizelele ukubaluleka kokubuyekezwa komthetho ukunikeza amakhosi ohlanga kanye nezinkantolo zamakhosi amandla afanelekileyo. Ngesikhathi amakhosi eneqhaza elibhekile ezindabeni zokuphathwa kwezwe, isimasikaze sibe ngesidlebeleke ngale ndlela ezindaweni zasemakhaya. Ukubaleka kwezinkantolo zamakhosi neqhaza lawo amakhosi nezinkantolo zawo kufanele kubuyekezwe kunikezwe nesithunzi esifanele. Anikezwe amakhosi izinsiza kusebenza ezisezingeni elifanele ukuze kuliswane nalesi sihlava ngendlela efanele. Isilo samabandla uBhejane uDlabakayise ngesikhathi evula ngokusemthethweni indlu yesishayamithetho saKwaZulu-Natal ekuqaleni kwalonyaka samtshena undunankulu wesifundazwe umhlonishwa omchunu ukuthi uma kungase kudedelwe isilo kanye namakhosi ukulwa nalesi sihlava ngokuphazima kweso kungabonakala imihlola yempumelelo. On behalf of the
Honourable
IFP,
member, your time has expired.
thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Honourable Botha, Western Cape Chair.
Chairperson, Deputy Chairperson, honorable members of this House, thank you for this opportunity. Deputy Chair, what a non-celebratory National Child Protection Week. And the irony is that we always create this hype when something bad has happened to our country's children. What is ultimately vital here is that we all should take responsibility for the protection of our children. As the African proverb states, and I quote, "It takes a village to raise a child," unquote. And in this case, it is up to us all to ensure that our children are safe and protected. Child protection is a whole year program. The DA in the Western Cape has themed this week, "Child protection is everyone's business." We realize that no government can replace the role of parents, and in fact, nor should it. Strong family foundations and the protection of our children must start at home. An example of how a community came together is the unacceptable, deplorable rape and murder of 3-year-old Courtney Peters. This Elsies River community did everything in their power to find the little one alive. Unfortunately, they could only find a dead body. What is unfortunate and in every single way unjustifiable is that the Western Cape have since the beginning of this year lost 19 children as a result of the most gruesome and heinous acts of violence, which includes rape and kidnapping. This is why we are saying no more. It ends here, it stops immediately. 19 is 19 too many. The rites of passage of a girl child should be part of a holistic program which involves all parents, entities, institutions, and stakeholders. Parallel to this should be a program for the boy child, because we have to, as early as possible, educate and empower our boys about how to treat and respect women. This highlights the needs for a communal approach. In fact, it is essential. As residents, we must always be vigilant, making sure that we remain informed about our children's whereabouts and the people with whom they spend their time. We must also be mindful of the adults and older people we expose our children to, knowing that some have questionable morals. To quote from our former statesman, President Nelson Mandela, and I quote, there can be no keener revelation of a society's soul than the way in which it treats its children," unquote. Deputy Chairperson, what frightens me is that the person who is supposed to be one of the custodians of our country's children, the National Minister of Social Development, is in no way serious or willing to address issues that's affecting our children throughout the country. How does the Minister, whose primary responsibility it is to ensure the well-being of our children, miss the launch of Child Protection Week? Especially when her department spent a large amount of money to host this lavish event at Langa High School on Sunday. But Chairperson, in the Western Cape, our goal is to create a self-reliant society by providing a comprehensive network of services that, among others, enables and empowers the poor and vulnerable. Therefore, the DA-led Western Cape Department of Social Development has aligned its priorities with the national outcomes and the provincial strategic goals by allocating its funding to service delivery in the priority areas of childcare and protection. In addition, Our early childhood development provision focuses on the need to increase the quality of education through safe environments. We have a growing list of over 1,700 registered ECDs where young parents are supported and assisted while having access to safe and creative spaces for children to play and develop. In fact, of the 2.1 billion budget for the 2017-18 financial year, the department spends the largest portion, which is more than 650 million rand, on services that empowers families and children. We have over 1,500 social work professions assisting and supporting our communities throughout the province. Chairperson, we do not just pay lip service to the support, empowerment, or protection of our children. In February 2016, the department, in collaboration with the Department of Health, launched the first 1,000 Days Initiative, which ensure children get the best start to their lives and the opportunity to reach their full potential. Here, there's a strong focus on health and nutrition, but also how vital it is to support a mother, especially during the first 1,000 days of a child's life. This goes back to the province, and I quote, "It takes a village to raise a child," unquote. But taking it further, to keep a child safe, and that means each and every single one. This clearly demonstrates the Western Cape government's commitment to not only creating safe environments, but to establish and sustain them. To this end, we're implementing various initiatives and programs to ensure that our children are protected, because we realize that there are unfortunate societal gaps that, if not addressed, could have dire effects on our children. From the Department of Community Safety, we have the Walking Bus Initiative. This program has adults accompanying learners to and from school so that they are protected from gang violence. Thus far, we've already launched 45 walking bus initiatives in especially communities that are being plagued by gang violence. Chairperson, another 7 will be launched by 21 June 2017. Deputy Chairperson, the "My child is your child" phrase should at all times be seen and not just heard. Ubuntu ought to be a daily occurrence in not only our communities, but for each one of us. And finally, Deputy Chairperson, as parents in our communities, we are so busy giving our children what we did not have that we don't give them what we had. I thank you.
Thank you very much. Honorable Tlhapi Northwest.
Thank you very much, Honorable Deputy Chairperson, Honorable Chairperson Metandi Mudise, Minister Mbalula, Honorable members of NCOP, MECs present here, special delegates, distinguished guests, Tumelang Bakhaitsu. It gives me a great pleasure to be part of this debate on Child Protection Week. The National Protection Week is commemorated in South Africa annually to raise awareness of the rights of children and articulate in Children's Act of 2005. As we aim to mobilize all sectors of society to care for and protect our children, we must strongly condemn the kidnapping as well as the murdering of our future resources, our children, by monsters manifesting itself in our male counterparts. The Bill of Rights in the Constitution specifically states that every child has the right to be protected from maltreatment, neglect, abuse, or degradation. South Africa has also drafted legislation to protect children, which is based on the United Convention of the Rights of Children and the African Charter on the Rights and Welfare of the Child. Protection are further reinforced through the Child Act, which emphasizes the state's role in the provision of social services to strengthen the capacity of families and communities to take care of our children. Honorable Chairperson, in considering this debate, I remain reminded of the tragic and brutal murder of the Courtney Peters by someone whose family trusted, and that person betrayed the trust of the family. Ga ke lebale le bo mme ba rona bao ba bolailweng botlhoko ke di-boyfriend kgotsa bona bo malome ba rape. Honorable members, ba setse ba badile bana bao amiwa ya bone e robale ka kgotso. Brutal murders of women and children happening in South Africa are heartbreaking. It is as if a demonic force has overtaken our men who are supposed to be our protectors and providers. Witnessing of young women being murdered and burned to ashes comes to prove that women are weak in the presence of men. Honorable Chairperson, the institutions like Tutuzela, Domestic Violence Act of 1998, National Council Against Gender-Based Violence must be supported ke rona rotlhe, go sa kgathaletsege gore o tswa mo pating e feng. Ke ka moo ko Northwest re reng some werk, some trek. Honorable Chair, in responding to this social ills as member of the Parliament, we must make sure that we uproot this malady from society and that the law enforcement arrest these perpetrators of crimes. Gongwe re oketse le dingwaga tse batho ba di fiwang ga ba bolaile kgotsa ba raipile. Ke bona o kare dingwaga tse re ba fang tsone ke tse nnyane, ke ka moo ba lekang go itirela fela ka bana ba rona ba e leng future ya kamoso, Honorable Minister. Honorable members, the rape culture in our country cannot be tolerated, and we support the initiative of the Honorable President of the Republic, Honorable Jacob Zuma, and the Minister of Police and other stakeholders in condemning this surge and by attending the crime in Bizo yesterday. In conclusion, Honorable Chair, we hope that all the initiative of the African National Congress government in tackling this scourge will bear fruits and halt this malady. I thank you.
Thank you very much, Honorable Member. Honorable Komba Salga.
Honorable Deputy Chair, honorable members, fellow South Africans. Allow us first, as SALGA Chair, to thank you for inviting SALGA to participate in this important debate today. Though I must, at the onset, express that it is not a pleasant but more needed and necessary debate given the current situation in the country, where a number of incidents of abuse against women and the girl child are reported, where women are not recognized anymore as bearers of society and children the future of our country. Gender-based violence is a serious and widespread problem in South Africa, impacting on almost every aspect of life. It is a fact that the issue of women and girl child abuse in any form is a matter of concern for all of us. It is one of the most pervasive violations of human rights in the world, one of the least prosecuted crimes, and one of the greatest threats to lasting peace and development. South Africa is a signatory to several conventions to combat gender-based violence, including CEDAW, the Beijing Platform of Action, and the Protocol to the African Charter on Human and People's Rights on the Rights of Women in Africa. Furthermore, we have strong legislative framework. However, let us admit that whilst international treaties and legislations are important, it is not enough to end GBV and strengthen responses. Although accurate statistics are difficult to obtain for many reasons, including the fact that most incidents of GBV are not reported, it is evident South Africa has particularly high rates of gender-based violence, including violence against women and girls, and the violence against lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, and intersex people. Chair, the SALGA Women's Commission is a reflection of the SALGA mandate and is thus established to coordinate, promote, and advocate for gender-appropriate strategies and practices within member municipalities and feed into national, regional, and global agenda. It is also a mechanism to institutionalize advocacy processes as the voice of women in local government and to ensure progress at a local level, as well as supporting the national, regional, and global goals of women empowerment and gender equality and equity. SALGA's commitment to addressing violence against women and children aims to make strong contribution to the development of municipalities throughout the country by working closely with national departments, provincial departments, municipalities, and civil society organizations. Secondly, facilitating the sharing of knowledge on eradicating violence against women and children between municipalities. Thirdly, facilitating the development of the capacity of local government, women, councillors, and officials. Fourthly, localizing the 365 national action plans to end gender-based violence. Local government can address gender-based violence as a key service delivery issue and work together with developmental partners by adopting an integrated approach. This kind of partnership will serve as an important tool to strengthen efforts to end gender-based violence by holding all three spheres of government, civil society, and other relative and relevant stakeholders responsible for the commitments they make. Problem with us is we make commitments, but we turn our backs on them. When it comes to protecting rights, the government needs to review legislation, practices, and customs, and abolish those that discriminate against women. Laws, policies, and programs that explicitly prohibit and punish violence must be put in place in line with international agreements. Government needs to improve the quality, accessibility of services so that women have prompt access to services regardless of their location, race, age, or income. Response services include healthcare services, including post-rape care, immediate and effective police responses, psychological support and counseling, legal advice and protection orders, shelter, telephone hotlines, and social assistance. The response to violence must be immediate, coordinated, and effective so that crimes are punished and justice is secured and local government can play a key role. Prevention, on the other hand, should start early in life by educating and working with young boys and girls, promoting respectful relationships and gender equality. It is at this stage of life when values and norms around gender equality are forged, where we can achieve sustained progress on preventing and eradicating gender-based violence. Remember, we're coming as a country from a history of patriarchy, where we've got stereotypes and we've got a challenge of mindset change. It is therefore working with men and boys as another way to accelerate progress in preventing and ending violence against women and girls. Furthermore, awareness raising and community mobilization, including media and social media, is another important component of an effective prevention strategy. Especially important is ensuring women's economic autonomy and empowerment as a prevention strategy. For a violence prevention strategy to be successful, it has to be unified, coordinated, informed, well-resourced, and directed across all clusters of society, government departments, and civil society. It is therefore clear that the solution depends largely on the collective push by all and from all sides, a multi-sectoral approach. I thank you.
Thank you very much. In welcoming the minister, let me invite the minister to
Chairperson, honorable members, we have no time to waste time. South African police service men and women are wide-eyed on the beat as we speak on this very important matter of our times. I want to assure South Africans that crimes against vulnerable groups, women and children, are a top priority, and we will be expanding thousands of overtime hours on it. We have no time to waste time. I will be remiss if I do not start off with, once again, sending our heartfelt sorrow at the recent violent crimes against our precious children and families and females, the most vulnerable in our nation. I'm sure the House joins me in sending our united deepest condolences to the victims, survivors, and their loved ones. We offer our meditation to you to be strong at this time and assure you that government's doors are fully open to you. We cry with you. Chairperson, a 15-year-old girl with courage and determination realized what the opposition benches in this House have demonstrably shown us today, why they will always remain not only in the opposition, but for once recognize this as a national issue of national interest and the need for us to unite as a nation. The young girl I speak of, Campaign for Girls' Education, is an inspirational way to the entire world. She proved girl children have incredible strength by enduring a brutal attack by the Taliban and 2 operations to repair her skull and restore her hearing. A brave and authentic fighter named Malala. She recognized that crimes against girls and women are cowardice and are beyond political demands. She taught us all that only a global response, a societal problem, requires this cancer of femicide, female infanticide, terrorism, rape, cross-border human trafficking, and other violent crimes against women and children. In Elsie's River, not far from this parliament, a 3-year-old girl, Katni Petersen, was brutally murdered by a neighbor who is now in custody facing serious crimes. In the same community, gang-fueled and drug-related gun violence indiscriminately targeted innocent civilians, boys, girls, men, and women. Chairperson, we have no time to waste time. And this requires us to effect not rhetoric, but certain practical changes. For example, we shall ensure that female victims receive the legal, medical, social, and psychological help they need, and that police and court process be made as tolerable and possible. The South African police is focused upon improving training and visible policing as some of the key areas in which effective change could be implemented. All this, Chairperson, is currently taking place at heightened pace. Our communities have rightly criticized the police for reluctance to interfere in domestic disputes, and in particular for their reluctance to arrest and prosecute the perpetrators of the domestic violence. And I want to make it clear today that domestic violence is not to be treated lightly. Violence against children, girls, and boys is totally intolerable. And I assure the children and women watching at home that we are doing everything to protect you and keep you safe from criminals. The traditional unequal power relations between men and women is now unconstitutional. Our past, that a man had power over his wife, including the complete control over her property and of her daily affairs, is history. Women and girls are not male property, full stop. This warped notion that a woman will be a man's property instilled another idea that a husband had the right to administer physical punishment to his wife. Female victims of this domestic violence often retract their police reports or suffer from the inside due to concern over the male breadwinner going to jail. This compounds this cancer into emotional and financial violence against our women. Rape and sexual assault, domestic violence and child abuse have remained unconnected to other areas of criminal victimization. Today we declare that ubudlwembe lobu. If you beat your girlfriend, wife, or partner, ungutsotsi, it will be unparliamentary of me to plainly tell you what will happen to you when the criminal justice system is finished with you. I will just say, we are coming for you, Tsotsi, you cowards. Chairperson, I want to reiterate a clear message to police management to supplement their operating procedures on crimes against women, children and lesbian and gays, and post in writing on all community offices the following 6 points. 1, all victims should be interviewed by a trained specialist police officer. Globally, SAPS has the second largest female police personnel after Norway. So as we fast track the training of specialist police, female police officers should conduct the victims' interviews. 2, where possible, the interview should be at a location other than a police station, if the police station does not have a private room facility. 3, medical examinations should always be carried out at a location other than a police station. 4, all victims should be given the option of an examination and evidence collection by a woman police surgeon. 5, only experienced police officer should be assigned to conduct the investigation. 6, all victims of sexual offenses, femicide and infanticide, loved ones should be referred to victim support. Honorable members, I have tasked my office to work with our counterparts to urgently evaluate the viability of having infanticide, femicide, and all domestic violence as a special category. An assault on a woman must carry a heavier sentence than just common assault. The offense of rape, femicide, and infanticide particularly is surrounded by strong feelings and insensitive interviewing of a victim. Already humiliated and degraded may cause further trauma. We must not re-humiliate nor re-victimize the victims. While some allegations of rape may be false, all investigations must commence on the premise that the complainant is genuine victim. Police and community should not be courts of law. Courts are the only centers to pronounce guilty or not guilty. Chairperson, our communities, neighbors, and families must not hide the shame of domestic abuse. I want to encourage South Africans to report any suspicion of domestic abuse, and remember always that each domestic beating is a potential murder. Each domestic sexual abuse of a child is a potential rape and infanticide. To end femicide, we need to end impunity, bring perpetrators to justice, and every individual has to change his/her attitude towards this being just a domestic issue. The criminal justice system is ready to exercise due diligence to prevent, investigate, prosecute, and punish the perpetrators. Together, we must lock them up. The killing of females because they are females threatens our national security by having a majority section of our population living in fear. It destroys gender balance, economic progress, and harmony. Rape, femicide, infanticide, and gender-based violence are henceforth regarded by my office as a fundamental threat to national security, and I instruct the police to deal with it in that manner as a priority crime. Women and children's rights are human rights too. Lesbian gay rights, the lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, intersex, and queer communities' rights are human rights too. To achieve this objective, the government will devote resources, funding, but most importantly, we have the political will to rid society of heinous crimes. Police will oppose all bail applications related to domestic violence. I'm fully cognizant that many of the murdered women and children come from the most marginalized sectors of society. They are poor, from rural areas, sex workers, illegal immigrants, and so on. None of these people deserve to be murdered. Illegal immigrants must report crimes against them. Sex workers must report crimes against them and not fear to be victimized by police. Police are required first and foremost to protect every resident within the borders of the Republic. Police are instructed to pay particular attention to these groups in their crime profiling and prevention strategies. We must not lose sight of the fact that police alone can't solve crime. Poverty must be eliminated. Inequality must be eliminated. Economic inequality between races and genders. Honorable members, we need a radical economic transformation now. We have no time to waste time. Each domestic beating is a potential murder. Each domestic sexual abuse of a child is a potential rape and infanticide. Chairperson, the executive led by President Zuma has visited the bereaved in and across South Africa. Our people want us to shut illegal shippings down, shut down drug houses. They are demanding we pay attention to minibus taxi business, the vulnerability of female using this mode of transport. Our people are asking for land to build safe homes for themselves. They complain that bail is given too easily, that some of our police collaborate with gangs. Our people want more social workers, not more police in their communities. They want safe sports fields and safe transport for children to school. We have heard you. We agree with you. Siyeza Naguni. Instead of finger pointing, political parties are encouraged to participate in government programs to encourage vigilance of communities, encourage that each community should have community policing forum. These crimes are not performed by members of particular party, but by society. We cannot afford cheap political scoring over such an evil and dark crime, often done in hiding. Let's teach our boys that they are because women are. African culture has inkosi and inkosikazi. Inkosi is the king. This makes women our queens. We value our queens in Africa. Together we must isolate criminals. Chairperson, let me emphasize a message to the police. No woman must be told to go fix things at home. No woman must be turned away without a proper investigation. Reports and statements must be taken confidentially in private rooms. When a missing report is made, police are expected to immediately conduct scene investigations and follow protocols and standard operating procedures. We have no time to waste time. Isikhathi sidliwe, sityiwe yinja. In closing, bantu bakuthi. In closing, my department will be launching a campaign against violence on women and children, including their vulnerable groups. We are saying to abotsotsi, not in our name. In the next coming weeks, every cluster, every police station will be turned into a war zone against gender-based violence. No woman shall be turned away. That is history, that is in the past. Watinta bafazi, watinta imbokoto, uzakufa, finish and plan.
Thank you very much. Honorable Munye.
Thank you, Deputy Chair of Council and the Chair of Council, also the lead speaker in this debate. I also declare editorially, Madam Chair and lead speaker in this debate, hashtag not in my name. Nsizwa yamabutho, mfoka Khawula. Iqinisa impela lento oyikhulumayo. Ukuthi le myth esetshenziswayo ukuthi ama-parts noma izitho zomzimba zalezi ingane zisetshenziswe ngento yomithi, imyth ekufanele siyikhondeme kakhulu, especially as Africans. Ngivumelana nawe impela kuleyo ndawo. I think we can have a joint program between Inkatha and the ANC. I can commit to speak to my leadership in the ANC. Honorable Ngwenya, you really moved me. I was very close to my emotions when you spoke, because you told the honest truth, and the honest truth, and the whole truth. You make mention and make reference to the fact that patriarchy underpins this behavior on the part of men, especially black men in this country. But you also stop short of making the point that colonialism and apartheid also contribute to this heinous behavior on the part of black men, African men in this country. And I will elaborate on that point later in my speech. Honorable Engelbrecht makes reference to the fact that violence and violent behavior that is televised as part of the content on our news channels and TVs may have a contributory factor to this kind of behavior. And we agree with you, Honorable Engelbrecht. And we agree with you because it's only now that you agree with us that it is important to censor some of the issues that need not to be televised in public. And that includes the violence in Vuane, which you did not agree to, by the way, previously. The Honorable Engelbrecht also make the point that the laws of this country has failed the victims of gender-based violence. And she makes reference to the fact that some judgment and sentences that are passed recently are questionable. It is strange that this comes from Honorable Engelbrecht, supposedly the most constitutional abiding citizen of the DA. It is very surprising, because where in this case is the rule of law that you talk about every day? Because a judge's decision can only be challenged in another court of law and be reviewed in terms of the law in a court of law, not by us as Parliament. But Deputy Chair, a quick scan on the headlines of the past 2 weeks gives an impression that there is an outbreak of warfare against women and girl children in our country. The headlines have been screaming at us that there is femicide taking place in South Africa. The ANC acknowledges that the levels of contact and other crimes in our society are unacceptable. However, it is important that as we raise our voices against these heinous crimes, we must be informed by the facts. When we look at the statistics and in terms of the contacts crime, namely murder and sexual offenses, it is important to bear in mind that while we need to deal with the cold facts, the impact of violent crime on the victims and those close to them is traumatic and influences the way we live our daily lives. Crime makes us feel unsafe in our homes, neighborhoods, and other places we visit. In the past 6 months, the Crime Statistics South Africa survey shows that about 36% of respondents have been victims of crime, or they have someone close to them who have been a victim of crime. Nearly half of the crime reported were in either burglary or robbery, rape and murder, respectively. The analysis suggests that the law enforcement officers working together with our communities have been able to either reduce or stabilize the contact crime statistics nationally and in all provinces. We need to ask, what are the statistics telling us? Are we having femicide in South Africa? And the answer is yes. The killing of women or girls, and in particularly by men, on account of her gender, we argue from our analytical point of view that this is a misreading of the situation. Statistics shows that the majority of perpetrators, particularly murder, are actually men. This means that men are most likely to hurt and kill other men the same way they will do with women. Internationally, prison populations are predominantly men. Almost 95% constitute of prison population is constituted by men worldwide. However, in South Africa, we note that such studies show that female homicide, unfortunately, is on average 5 times more than the global average. This therefore suggests, Chairperson, Deputy Chair, that South Africa is actually a violent society. First and foremost, we do not necessarily have a large population of men who hate women, but what we have are millions of boys and men who seem to be angry and excessively aggressive. We need to understand the reason why we have so much aggression among the males in our society and then address these. This is the only sustainable way to deal with the issue. We must apply honest analysis in order to trace the roots of the challenges we are dealing with. We are a society in transition from colonialism and apartheid to democracy. These systems were characterized primarily by national, class, gender, oppression of the majority by the few, the imposition of Western capitalism, which was essentially a foreign system of government and economy, as well as the uprooting of men while families from their traditional ways, as well as the uprooting of men and whole families from their traditional ways of life and thrust into ghettos where they had to eke out a living on the margins of mainstream of the economy. Was worst form of violence against millions of South Africans. On top of that, apartheid imposed restrictions such as the Group Areas Act, Influx Control Act, Bantu Education Act, and that legislated that the majority of black South Africans could not access the same opportunities as their white counterparts. Historically, in societies that have undergone such drastic changes in their ways of life, similarly spikes in crime and violence have been recorded. From the market town of Manchester soon after the Industrial Revolution, to the plains of Ethiopia where free nomadic people lived, to the remote mountains of Ladakh in India, to the cattle grazing lands of Maasai in Kenya. Colonialism and capitalism have brought destruction to cultures, to cultural norms and values, and misery to the working class. We therefore cannot act surprised by the phenomena we see in our country. We must rather take bold action to tackle the root causes of the crime of violent crime. It is also impossible to place a police officer in every household, street, corner, and neighborhood, as some often argue that we need more visible policing and nothing else. That is why the NEC of the ANC has expressed grave concern about the recent spate of brutal killings of women and children and discussed gender-based violence with a particular focus on intimate partner femicide in order to understand these phenomena. The ANC believes that as a country we must constantly affirm the freedom of a girl child and woman. We can only succeed in building a non-sexist society and deal with brutal effect of patriarchy when in South Africa every woman can walk alone in the middle of the night without fear of assault, attack, or rape. The ANC will mobilize all its structures and society at large to become actively engaged in campaigns in the prevention of killing of women, rape, and children molestation. We must all teach ourselves to drop the language of weakness, vulnerability, protection, and women and children as these erode women's citizenship. We must affirm women's inalienable right to justice, safety, freedom, and equality. Accordingly, the ANC resolved that we need to establish street committees and lead and drive a Know Your Neighbor campaign, set up early warning systems where child abuse, the rape and abuse of girls and boys occur, establish a single contact point in each street for reporting of incidences of brutality and violence, meet every station commander to advise them of the contact points and issues arising from our early warning system. Government must strengthen the justice system to better deal with cases of gender-based violence. Programs of the ANC-led government must target both victims and perpetrators. Among others, we must ensure the establishment of a special unit in each police station, especially trained for this type of work. This will ensure that we reduce barriers to reporting sexual offenses and domestic violence. Our families must stop negotiating sexual cases, and women themselves must stop withdrawing sexual cases. The law must be allowed to take its course. As a nation, we must redouble our effort to reignite economic growth to ensure that women do not seek economic refuge in abusive relationships. I thank you, Honorable Chair.
Thank you very much, Honorable Member. Let me take the opportunity to invite the Chair to conclude the debate.
Deputy Chairperson, thank you. Honorable members, we indeed are the National Council of Provinces representing provinces. The discussions today reflect that we have not been partisan. We have truly reflected on the ills of our society. We have put what we thought were reasons. We have all cried together and mourned the loss of our children, our young women, our mothers. The MEC Methusi says, for how long will this continue? My response, my sister, is for as long as we allow it to happen. Nobody gives you freedom on a platter. It's always historical that victims must rise up and express themselves. To what extent has patriarchy's lingering tentacles produced the black men of today? A lot. One of the things we did was we abruptly went into negotiations. We didn't create a valve for a large section of the South African community. We created the TRC. And I do know that most of us, me included, refused to go. Now, you've got that hangover. You also have a country that tries to move as quickly forward as possible and equalize on all fronts as quickly as possible. Whether we like it or not, South Africa's forward march on women, opening up all the gates, making sure that women have access to all positions and all levels, opening up in business, far outstrips any country in this continent. And yes, if you look at the numerical representation in parliament in Rwanda, you might be deluded in thinking that, in fact, they outstrip South Africa. They don't. They did not have a choice. After the genocide, women were in minority, and therefore, the boys were little children, very young, and therefore, automatically, leadership would go to women. So when you bring these things together, when you look at how we marched forward and demilitarized, remember, one of the warnings we gave South Africa was, we want to demilitarize our society as much as possible. We have been militarizing very subtly over the years, remilitarizing. That is not good. But we might also, Honorable Ngwenya, be tempted to follow up on the theory which is emerging in the world, and that is the emergence of the strong man. The emergence of people who are so powerful, they influence democracies. And there are examples now emerging in the world when you look at countries that are supposedly democratic, which are getting derailed even though democratic processes are in there. Now, when you put that sum total and you look at the ordinary man who did not have a valve, the ordinary man who didn't feel accommodated by affirmative action, the ordinary man who looks at triple BEE, which makes special reference to women qualifying as a criterion. When you look at men having to make way in the security sector, whether it's defense, in the financial sector, you have a lot of psychological unease. And South Africa is not known to deal kindly with psychological issues. So these men go into the survival of the fittest mode. And we get it as women. And that is why it is important for us to look at our men, to say to them, we respect you. We love you, Nochal. We want your protection. We respect you too. But we shall not agree for you to rape, to kill our children. We shall not protect you if you continue to abuse our children. And if we start by saying, we draw that little line on the sand, and it is enough. Honorable members, I want to invite you to join in the marches which are taking place by women against what is happening, against this femicide. I'm not inviting party colors. I'm inviting South Africans to stand up against this. I'm inviting consciences to wake up. I'm inviting Baruti. There are 2 of them in this house that I know of. 3, actually. Your sermons must begin to reflect the need. If in Genesis we are created in his image, male and female, why do you kill them? Why is it an issue if I lead you? In MK, we used to say, we all have balls, they are just differently placed in our anatomy. So God was very clever in how he distributed. So I'm simply saying, let's go out there. Let's go and lead society. But remember, society must also lead us. Let's go and lead, let us go and be led, but let us talk. You men, not in your name. As women, not whilst we are alive. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Chair. Honorable members, that brings us to the end of the subject for discussion today. Let me take the opportunity to then also thank the MECs and the special delegates for having made time to be part of our discussions. Thank you very much, and we hope that what you had started today, you will continuously do it, so that we then get to know what is it that is happening in our provinces, and how then do we profile those provincial interest and local government matters in order for them to receive or to be put on the agenda that will then receive national attention. So thank you very much for your participation today. That brings us then to the end of the subject for discussion, and then the Secretary will read the first order of the day.
Consideration of report of Select Committee on Petitions and Executive Undertakings, Tolbat petition.
Honorable Manhlanga, we continue the debate.
Thank you, Chair. Honorable Chairperson, on the 8th November 2014, Mr. M.S. Nkohla, the petitioner, submitted a petition on behalf of Mr. Mpumulwane Tolbat. Mr. Tolbat to the office of the Chairperson on the NCOP of the NCOP of the National Council of Provinces. Subsequent to the tabling, the Chairperson of the National Council of Provinces referred the petition in terms of the Rule 101 to the Select Committee on Petition and Executive Undertaking for its consideration and reporting. Subsequent to the submission, the Chairperson of the Council referred the petition in terms of the Rule 101 to the Select Committee on Petition and Executive Undertaking for its consideration and reporting. The purpose. The petitioner pertains to the alleged illegal occupation of the RDP house. The petitioner requested the intervention of the NCOP in ensuring that the house is registered in the name of the petitioner. On the 10th June 2015, the committee took a decision to hold a hearing on the petition. However, in the course of preparing for the hearing, the committee secretariat was informed by the petitioner that he is now occupying the house and the previous occupants of the house have been evicted. The petitioner further informed the committee secretariat that the intervention of the NCOP was no longer required. Honorable Chair, the committee then resolved that, therefore, it could recommend to the House for removal of the petition or closing of the petition. The petitioner should submit a confirmation letter stating that the petitioner was no longer seeking the intervention of the NCOP in resolving the complaints. Honorable Chairperson, on the 15th November 2016, the committee received a letter of confirmation. Honorable Chair, having received the letter of confirmation, the Select Committee reached a decision of closing the petition and henceforth recommending to the House to close the petition request for intervention. The Select Committee had further resolved that a press statement should be issued highlighting the challenges encountered by the beneficiaries of the RDP houses. In conclusion, Madam Chair, it is a fundamentally basic human right to have access to housing. As a committee, we recognize the value and importance of developing effective and efficient management system of housing list and allocation. We therefore move for the adoption of this report. I thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Mhlanga. That concludes the debate. I shall now put the question. The question is that the report be agreed to. In accordance with Rule 7.1, I shall first allow provinces the opportunity to make their declarations or vote if they so wish. A maximum of 3 minutes per declaration. We shall now proceed to the voting on questions. I shall do this in alphabetical order per province. Heads of delegation will vote by pressing in favor, against, or abstain button. I now call upon the provinces. Eastern Cape,
Eastern Cape agrees, Chair.
Free State,
Free State vote in favor, Chair.
Gauteng,
Gauteng agrees.
KwaZulu-Natal,
KwaZulu-Natal agrees.
Limpopo,
Limpopo yavumelana.
Mpumalanga, Northern Cape,
Northern Cape agrees.
Northwest,
West agree.
Western Cape. Okay, all the heads of delegation have voted. 9 provinces voted in favor. I therefore declare the report agreed to in terms of Section 65 of the Constitution. The Secretary will read the second order of the day.
Consideration of report of Select Committee on Petitions and Executive Undertakings, hearing of the Transkei Road Transport Corporation, petition held on 10th of September 2015.
Thank you very much, Honorable Mtlanga.
Thank you again. Honorable Chairperson, on the 1st December 2014, the late Mr. M. Mahlahlela, Mr. A.Z. Dumelisile, and Mr. N.J. Nodunyange, petitioner, submitted on behalf of former employees Transkei Road Transport Corporation, a petition to the office of the chairperson of the National Council of Provinces. Subsequent to the submission, the chairperson of the Council referred the petitioner in terms of the Rule 101 of the Select Committee on Petition and Executive Undertaking for its consideration and reporting. The petitioner requested relief and intervention of the National Council of Provinces in assisting the former employees to receive entitled benefits such as pensions, unemployed leave, and unemployment insurance fund from Transkei Road Transport Corporation, which was dissolved and liquidated in terms of government proclamation on 18 January 1996. Chairperson and members of the Council, on the 10th September 2015, the Select Committee on Petition and Executive Undertaking holds a hearing on the petition in the Eastern Cape. Section 56D and Section 69D of the Constitution of the Republic of South Africa provides that the NCOP can receive petition, representation, or submission from any interested person or institution. Section 17 provides that everyone has the right peacefully and unarmed to demonstrate, to picket, and present a petition. Guided by Section 56D and Section 69D of our democratic constitution and Section 101 of the NCOP rules and petition guidelines, our Select Committee extended invitation to the Provincial Department of Transport, Safety and Liaison, the Office of the Premier in the Eastern Cape, the Provincial Department of Labor, and Alexander Forbes. However, Chairperson and Council members, the only invited stakeholders that appeared before the Select Committee for oral and written submission were the petitioner, the Provincial Department of Labor, and Alexander Forbes. The Select Committee had observed and noted that a representative of the Provincial Department of Labor could not in submission provide clear information on the circumstances surrounding the petition. The Select Committee has, however, noted that the submission of the representatives of the Department of Labor that in terms of the current legislative framework, severance pay disputes are handled by the CCMA, and the referral of such dispute is done 30 days after the closure of the company. And following the liquidation of a company, any payments due to its former employees are often paid out after the sales of the assets of the company. Furthermore, Chairperson and members of Council, the Select Committee had the submission of Mr. Moton, head of Alexander Phelps, that the Eastern Cape Alexander Phelps was the founder manager for the former employees of the company's pension and providence fund, up until its liquidation in 1995. The Select Committee further noted the submission of Alexander Forbes that following the liquidation of the company, PricewaterhouseCoopers carried out an audit and the adjudicator ruling to determine the significance of the number of former employees who receive benefits on basis of their contribution record. The Select Committee also observed that the adjudicator ruling had set aside the unclaimed benefits and transferred them into an unclaimed benefit fund, with the opinion or choice for beneficiaries to claim from the fund. The Select Committee noted the submission of Mr. Mutau as the head of Alexander Forbes that the company had a list containing the names of 430 beneficiaries who were all former employees of various corporations in former TVV states who had not yet claimed from the fund. Honorable Chairperson, generally, the Select Committee had noted that during the education and the liquidation process, there was no evidence provided on the process of the judge or senior prosecutor for observing and monitoring purpose. Having considered the petition and submission from the invited stakeholders, the Select Committee recommends to the National Council of Province as follows. The National Treasurer, in collaboration with the Department of Labor, the Department of Transport, and Eastern Cape Provincial Government, should institute a forensic investigation on unpaid benefits concerns raised by the pensioners. The investigation should, among other, focus on implicated financial institutions, namely the First National Bank, PricewaterhouseCoopers, and Alexander Forbes. The forensic investigation report should include an audit into number of employees of the company it had prior to its liquidation, employees who received benefits post its liquidation, contribution record list of unclaimed benefits, and the assets held by the company before liquidation. The National Treasurer should, after 6 months of the approval of the report by the House, table the forensic investigation report. The Select Committee on Petition and Executive Undertaking, in concurrence with the Select Committee on Labor, Public Enterprise, and Finance, should monitor the implementation of the House resolution as part of ensuring executive accountability and parliament oversight. In defense of the democratic revolution, I thank you and move for the adoption of the committee report.
Thank you, Honorable Mtanga, the acting chairperson of the Select Committee on Petitions. Thank you very much. That concludes the debate. I shall now put the question. The question is that the report be agreed to. In accordance with Rule 7.1, I shall first allow provinces the opportunity to make their declarations of vote if they so wish. Thank you very much. We shall now proceed to the voting. On the question, I shall do this in alphabetical order per province. Heads of delegation will vote by pressing in favor, against, or abstain buttons. I now call upon the provinces. Eastern Cape.
Eastern Cape yavumelana na Islam.
Free State.
Free State iyadumela chairperson.
Gauteng agrees. KwaZulu Natal.
KwaZulu Natal yavumela.
Limpopo JM Teto.
Thank you, Chairperson. On the 21st of December 2016, the Provincial Ministry for Local Government, Environmental Affairs and Development Planning for the province of the Western Cape submitted a notice informing the NCOP of the resolution taken on the 7th December 2016 by the Provincial Executive Council to evoke the provisions of Section 139(5)A of the Constitution in Kannaland local municipality. This measure was primarily taken to effectively address the challenges of the institutional and financial management capability of the municipality. This notice of intervention was duly tabled in a select committee meeting on the 23rd May 2017 in terms of NCOP Rule 101 in order to consider it in terms of compliance with procedural and substantive requirement regarding notice of intervention. Having regard to procedural and substantive requirement on the notice of intervention, in particular compliance with Section 139(5)A of the Constitution, the committee, upon scrutinizing the submission and notice period, established that the Western Cape Provincial Government has not complied with the procedure for submission of such a notice. Section 139(5) of the Constitution of the Republic stipulates that if a municipality, as a result of a crisis in its financial affairs, is in a serious or persistent material breach of its obligation to provide basic services or to meet its financial commitment, or admit that it is unable to meet its obligation or financial commitment as well as financial management capabilities, revenue management and collection, the provincial executive must impose and set processes for a financial recovery plan. Section 139(6) further provides that if a provincial executive intervention
Please help us, assist us with the sound. Thank you.
Section 139(6) further provides that if a provincial executive interventions in a municipality in terms of subsection 4 and 5, it must submit a written notice of intervention to the cabinet member responsible for local government affairs, as well as the relevant provincial legislature and NCOP within a period of 7 days upon the commencement of such intervention. However, in terms of the notice submitted to the NCOP, the Select Committee noted that the provincial MEC for local government did not comply with procedural requirement outlined under Section 139(6)B of the Constitution. As a result, the notice was received by the NCOP on the 21st December 2016, that is 14 days after intervention began. As a consequence, it became clear to the Select Committee that the constitutional status and processes undertaken in respect of the intervention as required in terms of Section 139(5) of the Constitution is in respect of Kannaland local municipality was procedurally incorrect and flawed to the extent of inherent inconsistency with the Constitution. Having regard to the inherent lack of compliance with the procedural requirement stipulated under Section 139(6)B of the Constitution of the Republic, the Select Committee recommends that the NCOP disapprove the intervention in Kannaland local municipality in terms of Section 139(5)A of the Constitution. The NCOP should thus advise the Western Cape Provincial MEC for local government to retable the notice of intervention in full compliance with the provincial provision of Section 139(6)B of the Constitution. The Select Committee, Co-operative Governance and Traditional Affairs should incorporate, in cooperation with the relevant portfolio committee in the Western Cape Provincial Legislature, upon retabling of the notice of intervention, conduct an oversight visit to Kannaland local municipality in order to assess monitor and evaluate progress already made in turning the situation around, as well as in local opportunity to have a full understanding of the challenges facing the municipality. Chairperson, I move the adoption of this report. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Honorable Muthetwa. That concludes the debate. I shall now put the question. The question is that the report be agreed to. In accordance with Rule 7.1, I shall first allow provinces the opportunity to make declaration of vote if they so wish. We shall now proceed to the voting of the question. I shall do this in alphabetical order by province. Heads of delegation will vote in favor, against, or abstain. I now call upon the provinces. Eastern Cape.
Eastern Cape supports, Chair.
Free State.
Free State in favor, Chair.
Gauteng.
Gauteng agrees.
KwaZulu Natal.
KwaZulu Natal agrees.
Limpopo. Mpumalanga.
Mpumalanga siyavuma.
Northern Cape.
Northern Cape agrees.
Northwest.
Northwest agrees.
Western Cape.
Eastern Cape agrees, Chair.
Thank you very much. All the heads of delegation have voted. The voting is now closed. 9 number of provinces voted in favor. I therefore declare the report agreed to in terms of Section 65 of the Constitution. The Secretary will read the fourth order of the day.
Consideration of the report of the Constitutional Review Committee on 2013 public submissions dated 14th of March 2017.
I shall now call on the Honorable LP Nzimande.
Thank you, House Chair, honorable members. I'm a father of 4 daughters, so I have to say I must be counted in on fighting this scourge of violence against women. And it's, House Chair, it is also befitting to pay tribute to the Constitution, the 21 years of the Constitution, as the Constitutional Review Committee, that this is one of the mechanisms that is unique to our Constitution in South Africa. And I don't know of any country that has this unique privilege to its citizen, where they are given an opportunity to review matters that affect them in the Constitution on an annual basis. And I think we must recognize that and appreciate the strength of our Constitution as our supreme law. Chairperson, we tabling a report on behalf of the committee on the inherited 13 submission of 2013, which were considered by the committee after its inception and reconstitution in March 2015, and as considered in September 2015, and subsequent public hearings that were held in 2016 April with all the submitters. Important to note in the report that we're tabling, Chair, is that the conclusion of the committee is that of 10 of the submissions do not require they do not require a constitutional amendment, and therefore we report that the House endorsed that, and that 3 of them, language submissions, which include Sesotho Saliboa, Versa, and Sepedi, which is an old matter that is seized within the committee, and the South African Sign Language, and the Kilobedu as a language, and with the late inclusion of Khoisan language, all of which, Chair, are currently before the committee. Therefore, The conclusion, the resolution, the recommendation of the committee is that those language submissions which request changes or amendments of clause 6, clause 6 in chapter 1 of the Constitution, that they are currently before the committee, and therefore the committee has not pronounced on the desirability for amendments to the Constitution. Therefore, Chairperson, we're commending this report before the House as now closing the last installment of the legacy reports of the Fourth Parliament. But making a point, Chair, that this then indicates to the public and the community that this Parliament is serious about their participation. The debate yesterday, which was led by the Chair of Council, emphasized on the activist Parliament, representative Parliament. And through the Constitutional Review Committee, is one of the most important mechanisms. And therefore, Chair, provinces and members should take serious and critical the work that the Constitutional Review Committee provides. Indeed, Chair, it is important also to emphasize the fact that the Constitutional Review Committee is provided for in section 45, 1C of the Constitution. Important with that, Chair, is that when the Constitution in 1996 was made, the drafters of the Constitution put this provision to ensure that matters that were not resolved at the time should have a mechanism in the Constitution that will allow the public, the government, the state organs, entities, even members of Parliament, Chairperson, even committees, to be able to continue to make submissions and requests for the review of the Constitution to make sure that it is indeed relevant and appropriate and beneficial to its citizens as at large. So therefore, Chairperson, we table the report and commend that the House adopts this legacy report with 13 submissions. I thank you, Chairperson.
Thank you very much, Honorable Zimande. Thank you so much, the father of four, for supporting the women and girl child. We really appreciate. Honorable members, that concludes the debate. I shall now put the question. The question is that the report be agreed to. In accordance with Rule 7.1, I shall first allow provinces the opportunity to make their declarations of vote if they so wish. We shall now proceed to the voting on the question. I shall do this in alphabetical order per province. Heads of delegation will vote in favor, against, and or abstain. I now call upon the provinces. Eastern Cape.
Eastern Cape agrees.
Free State.
Free State support.
Gauteng.
Gauteng agrees.
KwaZulu-Natal.
KwaZulu-Natal iyayixhasa.
Limpopo.
Limpopo iyadumela.
Mpumalanga.
Mpumalanga agrees.
Northern Cape.
Northern Cape agrees.
Northwest.
Northwest agrees.
Western Cape. Thank you very much. All the heads of delegation have voted. The voting is closed. 9 number of provinces voted in favor. I therefore declare the report agreed to in terms of section 65 of the Constitution. Honorable members, that concludes the business of the day, and the honorable members are requested to remain standing until the procession has left the chamber. The House is adjourned.